Welcome to Chapter 6, Managing Communication and Information Technology. This is a really interesting chapter. If you read the opening case about the impact of information technology on communication, it is super interesting. I mean, it talks about how Amazon opened a store in 2018 in which you could walk into the store, pick out a couple items, walk out of the store, and you are automatically charged. You do not have to get in line to talk to someone, to exchange money or tap a card or insert a credit card or anything like that. So this type of communication and advances in information technology is beginning to shape our day to day. And the organizations that can continue to embrace this technology will, continue to lead and be successful. And the ones that can't, perhaps, will be left behind. Another example it goes into is it talks about Walmart. Walmart now has the ability in 20 Canadian stores that you walk in using the app. You just scan what you want and then you walk out of the store. There's a greeter there. Or I guess not a greeter, but whatever the opposite of a greeter is, maybe a person that lets you exit the store and says has a good day. You basically show them a ticket like you would if you left Costco and you've gone through your till, and as long as that essentially has a green piece of paper on it, or maybe your phone, then you walk out. And there's a lot to take into consideration when this happens. Lots of people are going to be losing jobs. Maybe we're going to be more impatient. I know that no one likes to stand in a line, and here's another example of ways that lines just become eliminated. Okay, so what do we need to cover through this chapter? The first one is explain why effective communication helps an organization gain a competitive edge. I mean, we just went through an example about how Amazon and Walmart might have a competitive edge over their competitors because they're just better at communicating or more efficiently. Describe the communication process and various communication styles. Describe the organizational communication networks and channels available to managers. Explain how the utilization of information technology can be vital to an organizational communication. And finally, describe how managers are using social media in communication. Okay, let's jump into the importance of communication in organizations. What I love about this photo is it is such a bad way to communicate. You can see the woman in the white hat is clearly trying to get the guy's attention on the phone with the clipboard, and he's on the phone. So I don't know. Maybe that is a good picture of what good communication looks like. But in my mind, I think he should be making maybe eye contact with her and put down the phone. But it is a stock photo, so it is what it is. Okay, so what is communication, first of all? So what is communication? It's simply sharing of information between two or more individuals or groups to reach a common understanding. Allows a firm to increase efficiency, improve quality, increase responsiveness, and foster innovation. So what is the communication process? It consists of two phases: the transmission phase, and that is information shared by one or two or more individuals or groups, and then the feedback phase, a common understanding is reached. So know that communication is a two-way street, right? It is not just someone typing out an email or sending out a voice message or a text or something on Slack or whatever else the communication medium might be. It is often transmitted, and then there is a feedback phase. Okay, here's the process. So communication starts with the sender, a person or a group wishing to share the information. They send a message, information to communicate. The sender also translates the message into symbols or language, a process called encoding. Noise is anything hampering communication, which, listen, we are inundated with so much noise right now in our society. It's hard to ignore it, but that is something that distracts the individual or group from the message. The receiver is the person or group for which the message is intended. The medium is the pathway through which the message is transmitted, and decoding is the receiver interpreting that message and making sense of the message. So here's a graphical overview of what the communication process entails. So you can see the transmission phase at the top, the feedback phase at the bottom. So if we go back a couple slides, here we are. We have the transmission phase, we have the feedback phase. And this is how it looks in a diagram. So it starts with the sender on the far left side of this diagram. They send a message. It's encoded in whatever language or symbols it should be. The medium in which it is sent is decoded by the receiver, and then it switches, right? The receiver becomes now the sender, and then it goes through the whole process again, and it is essentially done well, a loop, right? Like this. It is a loop or a square, and then you can see in the middle is all the noise trying to distract somebody from the message. Okay, so the communication process continued. Perception is the process through which people select, organize, interpret sensory input to give meaning or order to the world around them. It plays a central role in communication and affects both the transmission phase and the feedback phase. Perception bias and inaccurate perceptions hamper effective communication. Of course they do, right? We have to know that everything that we bring into our brain is filtered through a number of different biases that we've inherited through our society, our upbringing, a little bit from our education, and know that even though you try your best to communicate clearly, that message is perceived on the other end. And maybe it's perceived inaccurately, or maybe someone takes a biased standpoint, but know that even if you put your best effort into being a fantastic communicator, that information is not always received well. And I know this firsthand being a teacher, because sometimes I try to communicate clearly to students, and by the number of emails and questions I get, I know that I have failed in doing so. Okay, communication styles. I go through these communication styles, the 4 of them. I want you to think about which quadrant, which square do you think you live in? Which attributes that I'm going to go through do you think you exhibit most clearly? And maybe you're a little bit of a couple of them, but the research shows that we usually fall into one of these 4 quadrants. So the analytical communicator relies on concrete data and logical thinking. Somewhat reserved, they're impatient and tempered. You know, these very cerebral people who really want to know about the concrete information and see things as a straight line, maybe black and white. Then we have the intuitive communicator. They're the big picture type people. They might jump to the end of the game pretty quickly, and they're impatient with the step-to-step linear thinking. They say, don't give me all the details. I just want to know, what is the big picture here? We have the functional communicator, and they pay attention to detail in the process and the data analysis. They follow a step-by-step process, and they get irritated with illogical thinking, right? They get frustrated with people who may think with their heart and not with their brain. And then we have the personal communicator. Feelings are important as in open communication. A high level of emotional intelligence gets upset when labeled as warm and fuzzy, right? These are the type of people that you need in situations that are very emotional and sometimes volatile, right? They need to know that maybe you care about them as an individual and you're not treating them as someone who's just there to do their job and that don't have feelings and emotions. So which one are you? Are you the analytical communicator, intuitive communicator, functional communicator, or personal communicator? And maybe you're a little bit of each. So as we know, there is verbal communication and there is non-verbal communication. So verbal communication is encoding a message into words, either written or spoken. But I sometimes say it is like an iceberg because there is this whole level of non-communication under the iceberg that contributes to how you are communicating things. And that's encoding messages by means of facial expression, body language, and styles of dressing, right? You know that these things communicate a lot more than the words coming out of your mouth, right? What is your body language saying? What is your face saying? Are you dressed professionally? Are you dressed like you're just out doing work around the house or maybe lying around on the couch? Like all of these things communicate with the people that you are trying to get across to. Okay, communication skills for senders. And so we know this. We know that being a good communicator is a skill that you can develop. And here are 7 ways that you can become a better communicator when you are sending the message, right? So the first thing that effective communicators do is they send messages that are clear and complete. They encode messages into symbols the receiver understands. Yes, you have to make sure what you are sending out is understandable by the person receiving it. Select a medium that is appropriate for the message, meaning that if an email is more appropriate than calling everyone together for a meeting, just send a quick email. But if it's a big discussion, it's super important, don't send it over an email. So make sure you select the medium that is appropriate for the message. Select a medium that the receiver monitors. Yeah, make sure they're checking whatever channel that you're sending the message through. Avoid filtering, and that's holding back information and information distortion as a message passes through other workers, right? Make sure they, as number 1 stated, give them the complete picture. Ensure a feedback mechanism is included. Yeah, make sure that they understand what you're saying. I always say to students at the end of my emails, does that make sense? Did I answer your question? Just to ensure that the message I sent is being understood by the receiver. And finally, provide accurate information and avoid rumors. Okay, now on the other hand, you want to be a good receiver of information because as we have gone over already, there are 2 sides of it. There is the sender and there is the receiver. So 3 skills for improving the communication process. I want you to think about this. Think about, do you do these things? Could I be better at receiving information? Number 1, pay attention, right? As I said in the first slide, there's a picture of a woman talking to a man on a clipboard. He's on a phone. Don't be on your phone when people are trying to send you information. Okay, be a good listener. Make eye contact. Exhibit affirmative nods and appropriate facial expressions. If someone's saying something, nod. Yes, I understand that. Avoid distracting actions or gestures. Ask questions. Paraphrase. Paraphrase means, so what you're saying is the assignment is due Friday. Yes, the assignment is due Friday. That's a good way to paraphrase. Avoid interrupting the person. Don't overtalk. As they're speaking, don't try to speak to them. Make smooth transitions between roles of speaker and listener and be empathetic. Try to understand where the other person is coming from. Organizational communication networks and channels. Communication within an organization, it can be formal, it can be informal, it can be top down, bottom up, it can be horizontal, diagonal, it can be between departments or divisions, or it can come from a hierarchy. There's all sorts of ways for information to be disseminated throughout an organization. And here are 5 communication networks that are available to all managers. And what you have to assess is what network is appropriate for the organization that you work in. So the first one is the wheel. Manager at the center, who plays a role as the liaison and integrates other work groups by controlling information. You know, they're the wheel. They're in the middle. The circle, used among work groups who are collaborating using file sharing and rely all email. The channel, The all channel allows information to flow freely among and between members of the work unit. The chain symbolizes either horizontal or lateral communication among people at the same level, or formal top-down or bottom-up networks. And finally, the Y branches out from a chain to reach others. Here are the diagrams. So if you had trouble understanding those when I was going through them, here's another way to look at it, right? Here's an example of varying communication. I am going through what the text says, and then here's a schematic. So when you think about the wheel, you can picture yourself as the manager in the middle, and then information is disseminated from there. The circle is when you're having collaborative groups, and so on and so forth. So when you're trying to understand these concepts, it's helpful to also have these diagrams so you understand what exactly the all channel looks like, or the chain, or the Y. Okay, so the grapevine. The grapevine is an informal way of communicating information through an organization based on gossip or a cluster network. So these are the type of things that spread in an organization. Some of them are true, some of them are not. These are conversations that often happen in the lunchroom or in the parking lot after work, or maybe around the water cooler during break time. So information can also be disseminated in ways that the manager is unaware of, right? The manager didn't send out an email, they didn't call a meeting, they didn't give everyone a memo. This is essentially the rumor mill, right? Based on gossip or cluster network. Know that even though you may not be communicating, things are being communicated in informal ways, right? We talked about how communication can be informal or formal. This is definitely an informal process of how communication and information can be disseminated within an organization. So this is the key: choosing a communication network and channel, right? We talked about there are various ways that people can communicate, various ways that information can be disseminated. What is the best communication channel for your organization? Well, the first thing you got to learn is there's no one best communication network, right? There's no one way that an organization does it and it's better, and it never needs to be revisited or changed or adapted. So most appropriate choice depends on several different variables. First of all, the level of information richness needed, like do people need every little detail, or is the big picture good enough? Sensitivity of information involved? Absolutely, right? There are various things in the college, for example, that we communicate that is sensitive information that is not disseminated through the broad channels. But then there's other things that it's not sensitive, right? If the college is closing down because it is a snow day, then that information is not overly sensitive, so we can communicate that in a different way we would if a student was maybe going through a difficult time and had needed some additional support. Time constraints, right? The whole thing about the Amber Alert here in Ontario, if an emergency happens and we are constrained for time, they just blast that thing out there. They're not too worried about the information being disseminated through discrete channels. They want it sent out as broadly and as quickly as possible. And need for a permanent record. Is this something that needs to be recorded in writing, put in a file, and archived, or is it something that you can simply do verbally and not worry about that information being recorded? So information richness and communication media. This is a great figure to go through. Listen, essentially what is happening in our society. So it used to be that we communicated in very rich ways. And we're moving towards a society that is lots of communication in ways that maybe don't have that level of richness. So you can see at the top of this figure, we have on the left-hand side the most time and least time. So it's continuum from most to least. And then on the right-hand side, we have high information richness and low information richness. So Most of the communication in our society takes a little bit of time and has low information richness. So at the bottom it says impersonal written communication. If you go one level up from that, it's personally addressed written communication, including email and text messages. So you have to understand that when you send someone a text message, it takes little time and it's very low on richness, meaning that there's not much context for what you're communicating. It is hard for the receiver to understand the entire situation when you send them one small black and white written text message. But if you go up a level from there, it's spoken communication, electronically transmitted. You send maybe a video, and the video has your facial expression. They can pick up a lot more information when they can see you. And then finally, the pinnacle, the top of the pyramid, which happens less and less, is face-to-face communication. People don't do it. Why? It takes time. But if you want to communicate something that is super important, you want to do it face to face. Where if something is not as important, it can go down towards the bottom, right? So you might want to confirm that you're meeting Wednesday at 10 o'clock with someone. You don't need to sit down and have a meeting with that. That could be a simple text message saying, listen, let's meet at 10 o'clock later on this week on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day you decide. But if maybe they're having performance issues and they need to improve and they could be losing their job if they don't get better, you aren't going to send them a message and say, listen, you're not very good at your job. Please do better, right? You're going to sit down with them face to face and say, you are a wonderful person and we value you so much. However, your performance is not where it needs to be. And because of that, here's some rich information about how you need to improve and how we're going to support you to get there. This is critically important if you want to be an effective manager. You have to pick the channel that is appropriate to what is being communicated. Okay, face-to-face, we talked about this, provides the highest information richness, takes advantage of both the verbal and nonverbal signals we talked about, and it provides you instant feedback. It is more of an exchange. You can adjust what you're saying by what the person that is receiving the information is interpreting, right? Management by wandering around. This is great. Face-to-face management technique in which managers walk around work area, and there's a typo there on the slide. I'm not sure what that says. And they talk, and they talk informally to the employees, right? This is information that if you walk around and you're doing this face-to-face communication, you have a pulse on what is going on in the organization. You can have these little informal conversations, these back and forth, and really get a feel for what the culture and what's happening. Video conferences capture some of these advantages, absolutely. Okay. Spoken communication electronically transmitted. So this has been our whole world over the last couple of years, right? Spoken communication electronically transmitted through school and work and even socially. We have communicated a lot electronically. So spoken communication electronically transmitted has next highest to riches to face, right? Phone conversations, but no visual, nonverbal cues. They do not have tone of voice, sender's emphasis, and quick feedback. So there are a number of advantages to communicating in this way for sure. Personally addressed written communication. This form of communication has a lower richness than verbal forms, but is directed at a given person, right? So this is you sending an email, for example. Personally addressing helps ensure the receiver read it, cannot provide instant feedback to the sender. Obviously, if you send somebody an email, you don't know how that information lands until they send you an email back. And it's excellent for complex messages needing follow-up. Yeah, so if there are a number of different details that need to be covered, like this has an advantage over face-to-face sometimes, right? Because it's all written, all the details are included, and someone can read it several times if it is a very complex message. Email, Twitter, Facebook, and blogs. Senders and receivers are communicating through text messages on personal mobile devices rather than paper. Email and text message is so widespread that managers are developing their own etiquette. Shoutly capitals, yeah, are interpreted as screaming. So there's an example of etiquette that people are starting to adjust to, that if you type a message or an email in a certain way, it is received by people in a certain way. So for example, I don't know if you're one of the type of people that write all caps, but you shouldn't do it unless you're angry and trying to communicate that way. Some of the negative effects, email overload, we've all seen that, where we have too many emails in our inbox to write, to read, or care about. Junk mail clogging up electronic mailboxes, and ethical concerns and privacy concerns, because once you send it out there through Gmail or anything else, you know that that information can be written and stored and accessed by people other than the person you're sending that email to. Impersonal written communication. So impersonal written communication is the lowest form of information in terms of richness. It doesn't mean that it's never effective or never appropriate. It just means if you have something that is super important to communicate with someone, you might not want to do it in this way. It's suited for messages that need to reach a large number of people. Feedback is not even expected. It's just one way. Newsletters, reports are examples, but it can lead to this information overload. And it is a super abundance of information that increases the likelihood that important messages get overlooked. So if you have something that is really important, you don't necessarily want to communicate somebody by blasting it out over an email blast or text blast or something like that. You want to make sure that the people that need to receive the information, they do. So those are the different ways in which you can communicate. And as I said, you need to pick the appropriate medium for whatever you're trying to communicate. So as we were stating at the beginning of this chapter, there have been several advances in information technology that are going to impact our day-to-day. In I think one of those most important are the idea of AI, right? The artificial intelligence, that sometimes you can be communicating with somebody in the chat and not even realize that maybe it's not a somebody, maybe it is artificial intelligence trying to answer your questions when you're buying something online and want to know about sizes or availability or something like that. Okay, so these are some advantages to computer-based IT. It facilitates and improves the communication process, absolutely. I mean, you can send out a message instantly, and you can provide very timely, complete, and relevant and high-quality information. People can get back to you. Listen, customers can respond instantly, which is really good. And it doesn't cost a lot. I mean, once it's all set up, it's not like you're dropping something in the mail and paying a couple dollars for something to be delivered every time you need to communicate something. So rapid growth of wireless technologies facilitates linking together people, computers, increasing decision making. It is hard to find a place now in Canada, or maybe even the developed world, that does not have these wireless technologies where you can't get Wi-Fi and jump onto networks and begin communicating with people. So networking is the exchange of information through a group of interlinked computers. Like I said, it's almost everywhere now you can find a network to join. Even in stores, coffee shops, libraries, educational institutions, organizations. It's almost everywhere you can pick it up now. It's ubiquitous. Okay, so software developments. Operating systems software tells the computer's hardware how to run. And application software is designed for specific task or purpose, right? It includes programs such as word processing, spreadsheets, graphics, and databases. So management in information technology systems, electronic systems of interconnected components designed to collect, process, store, and disseminate information to facilitate management, decision-making, planning, and control. You know all about this because just being at the college, you have access to all sorts of information technology systems when it comes to sending information and collecting and storing stuff. So 6 computer-based management information systems, transaction processing systems, operation information systems, decision support systems, and expert systems. And that is a continuum from programmed decision making all the way over to non-programmed decision making. So management information systems continued. So the transactional process system, and these are systems designed to handle large volumes of routine, reoccurring transactions. Operations information system, these systems gather comprehensive data, organize it, and summarize it in the form that is valuable to the managers. This is so helpful, right? I mean, if you're thinking about maybe Georgian College, the transaction processing system is something like email, right? Large volume, it's routine, it's recurring. The operation information system might be scheduling classes, right? All the students go online, they type in what courses they want to take, or they opt in, and then we have operation information systems that helps manage who wants to take what, put every people into different sections at different days and build those schedules. And then decision support systems, they are interactive computer-based systems that provide models to help managers make better non-programmed decisions. And that could be, listen, going back to scheduling, there's a lot of scheduling software out there. If 5,000 students all enter their preferences and what they want to take, there's decision support systems type software that helps begin to build different schedules, which helps managers really solve the problem of who goes where to learn from who and when. Artificial intelligence, we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, and it's a behavior by a machine that, if programmed by a human, would be called intelligent. And so this is a learning system, a system that, I don't want to say it rewrites itself, but when you start entering options and you start having preferences one way or the other, it can begin to predict things that it didn't know at the beginning, right? Expert systems, systems that utilize human knowledge embedded in the computer software to solve problems normally reoccurring from human experience. I mean, a great example here is when you go to the doctor to do diagnostic work, right? And the doctor's trying to figure out what's going on with you. So we are getting to a point where doctors are inputting symptoms into a system, and then the computer is spitting out different options of what might be making you sick. It has gone as far as some doctors saying in a few years, if doctors don't do that, it's going to be considered malpractice, because why would you not want access to 10,000 doctors and what they think rather than one trying to figure out what's wrong with you? So that's a really, a little bit of maybe a crossover between artificial intelligence and expert systems. So the enterprise resource planning is a multi-module application software that coordinates the functional activities necessary to move products from one stage to customer stage, from the design stage to the customer stage. And that has to do more with industry and manufacturing. So we have e-commerce. My gosh, everybody knows about e-commerce now because it's the way we do business. So trade between companies and between trade between companies and individuals using technology. You know, anytime you buy something from Amazon, you're engaging in e-commerce. Business to business commerce, trade between companies using technology and the internet to link and coordinate value chains of different companies. Yep. So there, let's stay with Amazon, right? You might buy it from Amazon, but then a different company might deliver it. B2B marketing, internet-based online trading platform set up to connect buyers and sellers in an industry. And then business to customer, trade between companies and individual customers using technology and the internet. Okay, on to social media. Finally, social media strategies. Okay, so there's three interrelated functions of social media. The first one, it communicates the brand or identity of the organization, telling, listen, a potentially massive audience, who you are, what you stand for, and a little bit about, the investment there. So it allows for rapid real-time engagement with peers, suppliers, employees, customers, communities, and anyone else in an easy, accessible, direct way, and it provides opportunity to learn from instant feedback and gather instant statistics and data from users. There's a lot of information there for sure. So some important elements of social media. Spend time identifying who the target audience is, craft a well thought out message, choose the correct internet sites, provide engaging material, not just promotions, and promote and measure effectiveness of what is working. Here's a quick summary and overview of what we covered in this chapter. First of all, the importance of communication in an organization. And effective communication is the sharing of information between two or more individuals or groups to reach a common understanding, right? Good communication is essential for attaining increased efficiency, quality, responsiveness to customers, and innovation. The 4 goals for gaining a competitive advantage, right? The better communicators you are, the stronger your organization is. Learning outcome number 2, the communication process and communication styles. Communication takes place in a cyclical process. It was kind of a square of the diagram, but it's okay. It is like a cycle that has 2 phases, transmission and feedback. If you remember, transmission was on the top, feedback was on the bottom. Communication occurs verbally and non-verbally. We talked about this, right? And the richness of communication. Communication styles differ along with the lines of how reserved or open one is to the relationship and to the pace at which they interact with others. And there are 4 distinct approaches to communications. That was the 4-quadrant model we went through. Learning outcome number 3, organization communication networks. Communication networks are established mechanisms by which communication flows through an organization. There are 4 categories of communication channels: face-to-face, spoken communication electronically, personally addressed written communication, and interpersonal or impersonal written communication. Each channel varies in extent to which it enables the sender and receiver to reach a common understanding. There's that language again. It's all about reaching a common understanding. Learning outcome number 4, advances in information technology. Computer-based information gathering and the processes, systems are central to the operation of most organizations today. And management information systems are electronic systems of interconnected components designed to collect, process, store, disseminate information to facilitate management decisions for making, planning, and controlling. And then finally, learning outcome number 5, the social media. Social media continues to change the way people communicate. It is an increasingly important tool for managers, and social media strategies include 3 important elements and have 3 interrelated functions. So that is a quick overview of chapter 6 about communication. I would encourage you to read through this chapter, take notes. This will be on the final, so I want to make sure you have a great understanding of this information. If you have any questions about what we have covered, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask, and have yourself a great rest of the day.